nightmare. I'm sitting in a packed courtroom as an angry student accuses me of completely sucking the fun and creativity out of learning. The evidence presented by the prosecution is overwhelming and irrefutable. Assessments that cater to route memorization and regurgitation, monotonous homework assignments that breed apathy, and long lectures that induce mind-numbing boredom. Those are the dastardly charges against me. Tears rush down my face as I plead with the young prosecutor that it's not my fault, that I'm not to blame, that I'm merely a cog in some antiquated education system. But when I awake, I feel I know better. I have played the role of bystander for well too long, and I'm just as guilty. To atone, a little over a year ago, I created a website, Spin Education, to investigate how trends in education, including self-directed learning, not only instill in students a love of discovery, but also equip them with the skills necessary to succeed in the 21st century. In large part because of my blogging efforts, last year the National Association of Independent Schools named me a Teacher of the Future. In the past few months, I've also written for Edutopia and The Atlantic. I've interviewed many of the nation's most respected educators and authors, all in an effort to answer a burning, if not somewhat selfish, question. By integrating elements of self-directed learning into my more traditional classroom environment, can I transform my nightmare into a dream? Trying to make that endeavor a reality, I've had to overcome several challenges, the first of which is making the learning significantly more student-centered. To the best of my ability, I now abandon completely the sage on the stage lecture style in favor of empowering students to realize more fully the relevance of what they choose to learn, and how empathy and knowledge combined can indeed make a difference. For example, my sophomore history class recently learned about King Leopold's Congo and the genocide that ensued there between 1890 and 1910, claiming upward of 5 to 8 million lives. Of their own volition, students began to explore more recent acts of genocide, and this gave me an idea. I tossed aside the remaining units on European imperialism, instead allowing students several weeks of class time to investigate and find practical ways to help victims suffering today of state-sponsored terror. As I speak to you right now, back in Miami, students are working to launch a website tentatively called Students Against Injustice to reach an even wider audience. Powered by essential 21st century communication skills, these teens are making relevant use of what they are learning to try to change the world. More still, unlike the way a typical history student's recollection of names and dates fades with time, this type of learning has serious staying power. Only midway through the project, dozens of students have professed to me their passion for developing their websites well into the future, hopeful of making a difference. But allowing students to explore and pursue individual passions isn't the only thing teachers can and should be doing in the here and now. For me, some of the most powerful scenes in Charles's documentary features energetic, empowered students discussing classic literature, philosophy, and history without the presence of a teacher. Inspired, this fall, I co-wrote an article with a former student for Independent Teacher magazine titled A Tale of Two Teachers. In the piece, we write, "The role of teacher is changing. In the classroom, no longer are adults the only source of knowledge, and often they aren't even the best. Now, more than ever, kids are taking learning into their own hands. The best teachers embrace this development and don't feel threatened by students who may know more than they do. Instead, they revel in a changing dynamic in which students and teachers learn together to improve their collective understanding and mastery of relevant subjects and skills. To that end, I work with my journalism students to launch and maintain an online news site. Likewise, I work with my government students to make their voices heard on important policy matters. I also work with my colleagues in the science department to help students pursue and learn about environmental stewardship. In this co-learning environment, I'm constantly learning from youth who demonstrate creativity and innovation. And I see absolutely no reason why the role of teacher can't or shouldn't more accurately resemble that of a coach or mentor. We need teachers who are more excited about being part of the learning process and less intent on controlling it. We need teachers who are willing to challenge the status quo. And speaking of challenging the status quo, in self-directed learning environments, including the one at Monument Mountain, students are encouraged to fail. Accordingly, I don't penalize students for simply progressing through the learning cycle at different speeds and encountering failure along the way. I do give formal assessments, but that's because I have to. In most instances, though, I allow students an infinite number of retakes. This certainly creates more work for me, but it's well worth it if even one more student feels safe and secure in learning from failure. As students often tell me, nothing kills motivation faster or more completely than a string of damaging Fs and the feeling that it's impossible to recover from them. In my classroom, students know that an F does not define them. Rather, it provides them an opportunity to appreciate the learning process by doing something a second, third, or maybe even fourth time around. Of all the advantages that stem from self-directed learning, which I've barely scratched here, none is more significant than encouraging and even rewarding failure. This world needs risk-takers and innovators who aren't afraid to fail or go up against adversity. In too many instances, teachers breed students who are risk-adverse, scared of doing anything that doesn't guarantee success. Along those lines, I'm reminded of my favorite passage from Jack Kerouac's On the Road. The only people for me are the mad ones, the ones who are mad to live, mad to talk, mad to be saved. The ones who never yawn or say a commonplace thing, but burn, 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 like fabulous yellow Roman candles, exploding like spiders across the stars. Once we help our nation's youth become more passionate, I'm hopeful my nightmare will certainly fade, and my dream will finally be realized. Thank you.